Welcome to the Newtown Big Dreams podcast, an interview-style talk show that's your gateway to the fabulous and fascinating people who relocated to start a new life. Whether you're new to our podcast or your city, our fellow neighbors from across Canada, North America, and the entire English-speaking world share their stories of reaching new horizons and big dreams. So sit back and relax as we navigate in-depth and intimate conversations with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, executives, creatives, and anyone who can share their story about their Newtown big dreams. And now, here's your host, Luke J. Menkes.
So, Jennelle, you're one of our rare guests that spent most of her life in Kelowna. And did you go away for part of that time?
I did. Around my early 20s, I headed out to Nelson for about a year, or less.
Right. Mm-hmm. And what did you do in Nelson?
I just needed a little break from Kelowna. Having lived here most of my life, I thought, there has to be somewhere else that's even more beautiful. So headed out to Nelson. I had some friends out there. I was following a boyfriend at the time.
Right.
And just worked a couple of pretty casual jobs.
Yeah.
And took in the sights and spent spring and summer and a part of fall there.
Right. Mm-hmm. Were you conclusive, like, I got to get back to Kelowna, that's home?
I was actually. I had a friend back in Kelowna at the time that was pregnant, and she was going to be giving birth within a few months. I wanted to be here for that. I missed my family. I missed just the feel of Kelowna. And as much as Nelson was great, it's definitely more somewhere I would visit. So, back I came. It was a pretty quick decision, too.
Right. I lived in Nelson for 4 years, and then I moved to Kelowna in 2011. And whenever people ask me if I have any regrets about moving here, I always say, I wish I moved here sooner. Because I really love it. So it's always interesting to hear people's stories. There's so many people in our city from other places, and a lot of people like yourself that went away for college or, for a romance or something, and then they just missed the city and couldn't wait to get back.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have a pretty cool business downtown, and we were just talking about how it's where my real estate office used to be. I was there from 2014 to 2016. And I think you moved in 2016 at some point.
I did, yes.
Yeah. So tell us about your business. It's a beautiful shop. I walked in a couple of times. I walk by it quite often. So tell us how you got the concept for it and what it is.
So my business is called Karmyc Bazaar. Mm-hmm. I actually, just as of yesterday, I'm now working with 93 artists, all from Canada.
Wow.
Lots of local BC-based, and then a few artists from Alberta, New Brunswick, and Ontario. Mm-hmm. And I would go to other cities, often bigger, like Vancouver, for instance, and I would find these amazing exhibitions with all this more kind of underground, quirky artwork.
Right.
And I would be so inspired. I remember one time there was a little gallery, strangely in the top level of a mall, and it was really hard to find in Vancouver, but I spent probably 3 hours in this gallery.
Really?
And I was with my mom, and poor mom was being such a good sport, and I kept going, I'm going to be a while, like you can just come back for me, it's fine. So I would have these trips like that, and then I would come back home, and I would find little pockets of kind of similar art, but not all in one place.
Right.
So I thought, okay, this is, to me, a niche that could be filled. So
you love art. You love being around art, obviously.
I do.
And what kind of art was that in Vancouver where you spent 3 hours?
It's hard to describe. People come into my shop too and they'll ask, like, what kind of art is this? And I have a really hard time putting a term onto it, but I'd say it's art that's very different. It's not your typical, like we have landscapes, but they're more surreal. Or some of the art will deal with like bones or darker, more macabre themes at times. Things that I think sometimes people are a little bit hesitant to explore because it's tapping into that other side of your psyche. We all have a light side and a dark side.
Right.
And I personally don't think there's anything wrong with both. We need both to be a human being.
Definitely.
So the shop does explore some of those themes a little bit more. There's still the lightness, of course, as well. I term my shop whimsically dark.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're talking about paintings mostly?
We have paintings, but then there's also prints, pottery, jewelry, clothing. I've really branched out, I'd say, probably in the last year to bring more offerings into the shop.
Interesting. And so you built, I think you said 93 relationships with artists across the country.
Yes, that's right.
And have you seen all these people in person, or do people bring things to you and say, hey, you should check this out, you should carry this in your store or consider it? Like, how did you find all 93?
It's a bit of a hybrid. So definitely, especially when I first started out, before I even opened, I had this idea kind of percolating in my head. And so I would go, say, to Vancouver, and I would see an amazing artist, and I would make sure to grab a business card. So for quite some time, I was gathering cards.
Right.
And then when it was time to actually open up, my first space was over by Prospera Place. I was in an artist collective space.
Okay.
And yeah, I contacted these artists that I had been just enamored with, sometimes for a few years, going, oh, we'll see what happens. And then when I was getting the yeses back, it was amazing. So started out with 16 artists. And yes, so some of them I definitely sought out myself. As time is going on, more artists are starting to come into the shop to inquire about having their work in, or they're emailing. Clients will come in and say, yes, you need to see this person's work.
Right.
So it's a bit of all the things now.
And it's all Canadian?
All Canadian, yes.
All of it. Is there some native, like Aboriginal?
Not at the moment, no. It's hard because I'm trying to really get kind of a brand going. I want everything to be very cohesive. So it would have to be the right work. I'm definitely open to it. I have an appreciation for it. But I need to find the right thing.
So you have a certain look and a certain feeling to the store.
Yes.
And did you have a lot of retail experience before doing this store?
I am one of those people that have had a lot of jobs. I was never really settled working for somebody else. And back in my 20s, the job market was quite different. You could easily work somewhere. If it wasn't quite what you wanted, it was easy to get something else. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, but that's how I did it.
Right.
So I did have a lot of retail experience because I would kind of try something. Oh, okay, this isn't quite what I'm looking for. I would try something else.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Well, that's a good thing, I think, because a lot of people get into a business, they dream of it. So, for example, I always wanted to be in the food and beverage industry, or I thought I did. And it was way harder and way less fun than I thought it would be. Because I used to throw big parties in the Cayman Islands, and I knew how to host parties, and I knew how to gather, a chef and a DJ and put everything together. But 7 days a week, dealing with staff, dealing with payroll, dealing with taxes, dealing with the liquor inspector and the police and intoxicated people, was totally different. So I think it's really good if someone has experience in the field, before they do something, because you kind of know how things work. Whereas someone who just loved art and said, I'm going to open a store, if they didn't work in retail before, I think you would have had a lot more problems.
That's a good point for sure. And with having so many different types of jobs, I've been able to bring those little bits of skills in to what I'm doing. And then I also know that I'm terrible at math, so I have a bookkeeper. So I know when to outsource, but when to learn and figure it out myself. So.
Right. So how about pricing? Like, how do you determine the price of something? Is it based on what the artist is asking?
Mostly, yes. Because I don't know how much time they've put into a piece, or how much their materials cost, or how many years they've spent cultivating their skills. So I'm pretty firm on them coming in with a price for me.
Right.
Or if they come in and they're really unsure, say it's a newer artist to selling things, we'll sit and talk about it together. But those are my questions. How long did it take you? keeping your materials in mind, your skills, all that kind of thing.
Right.
Yes.
I think pricing is really an art in itself. Because we see humans will pay a lot of money for something if they perceive it to be really high quality. And of course, the time and effort and materials used is important, but we will see people pay more money for something that they perceive as more beautiful.
Oh, totally. If something tugs at your heartstrings, for me personally, I will find a way to have that be mine.
Right.
Whether it's a payment plan or eating noodles for a month or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So have you encountered many situations where something just sits for a long time? Like people say, I love it, but I can't justify the price. And you've got to make adjustments. Does that happen?
For sure. And sometimes too, I'll have a piece for a while and I know it's a really beautiful piece and it's just waiting for the right person. Mm-hmm. But it's funny, every time that happens where I've had something for a long time, like I even had a piece, the first one from the artist had sold really quickly. So I had asked, hey, can you send me up another one from Vancouver? And I sat on that piece for probably close to a year. Mm. And because of the size of it, I'm thinking, how am I going to get this back to the artist? Mm. So I was just starting to mull that over when someone comes in, I think the next day, fall in love with the piece. They put a deposit down. They come back an hour later. Actually, I just want it now. I'll take it. And we were done.
Amazing. Yeah.
So it's like the pieces are just waiting for the right people. Mm-hmm. We just have to wait for them to get connected, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And I guess you're constantly thinking about that because you want to have enough space for new things, right?
Definitely. Yeah, it's a great space for me, but there isn't a ton of wall space, and I want it to always feel fresh when people walk in. So yes, I'm either moving things or rotating pieces out, or it's constantly shifting.
Do you find over the years you're accumulating a nice base of regular customers? So people will come in every few weeks and say, what's new?
Yes, that is starting to happen more so. I'm just in year 3 now, and I'm really noticing that. And even now that summer is starting, I'm getting tourists that were in last summer coming back this summer and going, oh, you're still here. We're so happy. We were looking forward to coming back.
That's awesome.
It feels really good. Yeah, it's kind of that highest compliment, right?
Right. I had a similar experience when I had the real estate office there. I had tourists come, and then they would come back the next year and say, oh, you're still here. You were very friendly. Can you show us some houses? It's totally different, but I think the location is really great. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great thing. So have you always been into art, like since you were a young girl? Or is it something that evolved as you got older?
I would say it's always been in there somewhere. I've always been into creative things, different things. I like to write as well, so that's been part of life too. So just all of the creative things. I've got artists in the family, so that's been around for as long as I can remember, going to, say, my uncle's art shows, that kind of thing. So I personally I couldn't probably paint you something for the life of me. It's not a skill I have, but I've always had the appreciation.
Yeah. And you can recognize beautiful art.
Definitely.
Which is... interesting. And you like to read creepy stories.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about that. Do you do readings at the shop or where do you read these creepy stories?
I'm more just in my personal time. I've always got my nose in a book.
I see.
Since I was a little kid too, I've probably started reading Stephen King way before I was supposed to.
Right.
But always been into the creepy stuff. I remember going out for dinner with my parents and I'd have my nose in a book right till the food came, or we would go when Blockbuster was still a thing and I'd be down the horror aisle begging my parents to rent Poltergeist rather than being in the kids section. So there's always been that appreciation for the darker side of things. And I just love to read.
Interesting. Have you ever had a situation with an artist where it didn't work out, where just the relationship was not... like you weren't on the same page? Yes. They wanted a different price or they didn't deliver things on time or things like that.
I have had that a few times, yes.
How do you deal with it when you're dealing with a relationship that's not going smooth?
It's really hard, and that's been probably one of the most difficult things that I've had to deal with, because by nature, I'm not good at confrontation. I'm working on speaking my mind more when I need to. So it's very difficult. Mm-hmm. I think each situation I really have to take case by case, and I'm just learning as time goes on that, just being really honest with somebody is the best way to go. Like, hey, I love your work, but the turnaround needs to be quicker because it is so popular and it's just not working that way. Or sometimes I've brought in work that I've loved, and for some reason it's just not selling. So then again, it's, hey, I really love your work. I'm so confused why it's not being adopted, but let's maybe try again later.
Right.
So just remembering that we're all human beings doing the things, and just being personable, I think, is kind of the best way to go. And I wasn't always great at that at first because it was so clunky and foreign to me having to do this. Yeah. So I'm learning every time I have to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah. Can you hear that buzzing sound?
I can.
Yeah. The guy who lives in the suite has this, I think it's like a 1972 diesel pickup truck.
Oh, okay.
And it sounds like a minor earthquake every time he comes in and comes out. And so if people are wondering what that noise is on the podcast, that's what it is. I think every 2 or 3 episodes we get about 15 seconds of this.
We could have made it into a story.
Right? And, well, you're a writer. Also, you're writing poetry. Poetry,
yes.
And so the book that you're trying to write, how many poems do you think it will have when it's finished?
It's hard to say. I was looking at other poets that were releasing these little chapbooks, and that's when it's like a smaller volume of poetry. And there's anywhere usually from kind of 20 to, it's a broad range, 20 to maybe 60 poems. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting at about 30 right now that I would feel comfortable having in the book. And I'd like to get to 35 or 40 for my first published book.
Are the themes similar to like Stephen King and the type of art that you like?
Strangely, no. Well, there's little hints maybe, but the project I've been working on, it's been over a year now, is I'm calling it my personification project. Mm-hmm. And what I'm trying to do is put characters around different emotions. So for instance, fear, I've created a character and I'm trying to describe what my interaction with that character would be. Mm-hmm. So it's been interesting. I've got an ongoing list of different emotions that I'd like to personify.
Right.
And some are very happy and light. And then, of course, getting into the more difficult themes of grief and loss, rage, fear, that kind of thing. Those are, of course, in the darker realm. But
yeah. Do you plan to self-publish? Like, are you going to get it printed and sell it on Amazon, or are you going to try to find a publisher to carry this?
I'd like to self-publish. I think there's something really cool about that process as well, being in charge of all the formatting, the layout, and all of that. Mm-hmm. And then I am working with a local artist to do some illustrations for the little poetry book as well.
Nice.
So initially I had my goal was to try and have this ready to go by Christmas. Now looking at it a little bit more, I'm thinking that might be something for spring 2020, but we'll see how it goes.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's great. Tell us about some of your favorite trails in the Okanagan.
Ooh.
Do you hike a lot, or is it more of a walk?
It's more of a walk for sure. I have a 10-and-a-half-year-old pug. So she's not really too hike worthy, but
now,
she likes
pug, they've got short legs. Is that right?
Pretty short, and then they have very squished in faces.
Right.
Yes.
So you're not really mountain climbing.
Oh no, unless she was in a backpack on my back. Right. So we're more out for a pretty leisurely stroll.
Yeah. And Knox Mountain, or is that too much of a climb?
I like Knox Mountain, but I really like Callamore Park, just over the bridge on the west side.
Oh, I don't know it.
Oh, What's it's nice. You're quite high up as you go, so you've got a really beautiful view of the lake. You can go right down to the beach, so I've gone down there and kind of had a picnic and hung out. There's some parts that are really lush, so you get some shading from the sun. It's beautiful. I also really like Crawford Falls, and even chunks of Mission Creek Park are really nice too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We've got so many great trails and things you can do outdoors, and very short drive from downtown. So tell us a little bit more about your store. Where is it located? And when are you open?
So I'm open Tuesday through Saturday. Tuesday through Friday, I'm there 10 to 6. And Saturdays, I'm there 10 to 4. Mm-hmm. And then closed on Sundays and Mondays.
And if someone wants something cool for their house, this is the place to go. So
Definitely.
It's artwork. Do you have any sculptures, or is it mostly like prints and things that you hang on the wall?
I've got sculptures as well. I work with an amazing artist called Wingnut Whimsy. She's a female welder out of Summerland, and she does these amazing metal sculptures. She'll go to, say, pick apart and get a whole bunch of car and truck parts and then weld these crazy characters. She does a lot with robot themes and animals. They're very, very cool. All different sizes, too.
Yeah. It's an amazing store. People should definitely check it out. What would you say is the biggest thing you've had to learn about the retail business and the art business since you started? Like the biggest surprise?
I would say going with the flow is big because I went in with a very strong conceptual idea of what I wanted to sell, what I wanted the theme to be, and I wasn't willing to let go of that, but I'm realizing that I do need to flow a little bit more with, say, what the community's looking for, what some of the trends are that still are fitting with my branding. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really expect that. I kind of thought, I'm going to build this is what it's going to be, it'll be this way forever, and I'm learning that, especially with retail, that is not how it goes.
You have to adapt.
Yes, exactly.
Very true.
Because that's the thing, like we have, I'd say, decent security and stuff during the day. Mm-hmm. Decent, but then like the vandalism and stuff that's happening at 2-3 in the morning often. Though mine strangely was at 6 p.m. People were out for dinner, like super strange. But
do you think it's the marginalized community that's doing these things, or is it sometimes people coming out of the nightclubs beyond drunk?
I do. I think it's both, and I think we are quick to put it on certain people, and that's not fair. And actually my boyfriend had kind of called me out on that when my window got broken, because of course I was very angry. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of going, wait a second, you have no idea who did this. And it was good. It kind of reined me in, and I'm like, you're so right. Yeah. So when we catch people on video, that's then a different story. Yeah. And it's been, I'd say, both sides for sure. But
it's I think it's a safe experience for shoppers. I mean, I never had any sense of danger, even with my daughter when she was 6-7 years old. She's 14 now. But I always felt safe going downtown during the day. But this affects business owners because it tends to happen after hours when the shop is closed.
Totally. Yeah. Right? And I'd say I've just noticed a big difference in the last, because I haven't been around that long, but even in the 3 years I've been there, it's way different. Yeah. When I started out, I didn't really have a whole lot of concerns. Mm-hmm. And now I'm at the point of, I get nervous. I'm there by myself. I'm not a very big person.
Right. It's important for people to shop locally.
Very important. Yes. I think what creates a vibrant community is having local shops, having the handmade, the unique, not having a bunch of big box stores. Mm-hmm. And so the only way, though, for us to stay open and to continue providing amazing things is for our community to come down and check out what we have. And if you're looking for a gift, maybe thinking of trying to do that locally first. We have our first zero-waste grocery store in town, so checking that out. I just think once you start to go down that rabbit hole of local, you find that it's actually quite easy to support that. Yeah. It's just getting into the mindset.
That's right. And being aware of what local shops are out there.
Definitely.
Right. I mean, you mentioned Pulp Fiction earlier. It's such a great spot. When I was studying for my real estate license in 2012, and I was running a delivery business, they were like parents to me. They were amazing. So I would sit there and get a bowl of stew and a coffee and study for my course, wait for the phone to ring to get a delivery. And I could spend, $10 and they would let me stay there all day and study. And if I got a delivery, then I would have a little more money and I'd buy another coffee. And it was great.
They're amazing. And that's the thing. Local shops, you get that experience when you go in. You don't get that if you've gone into Walmart.
Well, exactly. And now when I meet a client, they want to meet at a coffee shop, I always suggest there. So it's, I like to joke and say it's like my branch office because I have so many business meetings there. And it's just gratitude for, how great they were back in 2012, 2013, So another important thing I think about shopping local is it really benefits the whole economy. Because if you go to Starbucks, if they're profitable, that's great because they can keep people employed. They can keep paying their rent. But the profits go outside of the city. They go somewhere else. If a local business makes profit, that money tends to get spent back into the community.
Exactly.
Which is good for everybody.
Exactly, because I'll make money for the shop. That allows me to buy my groceries. I try to buy them locally.
Yeah.
Buying clothing, all that stuff, buying gifts for other people. It's just, continuously going right back into the local businesses.
Yes.
The money being spent is helping to support people's dreams. It's helping to support keeping the doors open, helping to support other artists that maybe are in shops like mine. And on another side of that, I think supporting local can also mean just coming in and visiting. It's not always, because I'll have people come in and they'll look around and we'll have a great conversation and they'll say, sorry, I can't buy anything today. And it's like, well, I'm just happy you've come in and checked it out and spent that energy chatting with me. So
that's good to know.
There's definitely different ways to support local. It doesn't always have to be monetary. Obviously, we appreciate that. But we really appreciate the visits and the interest as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I believe it turns into business over time. Like the example I gave with Pulp Fiction, I spend a lot more money there now.
Right.
Because I had such a great experience, So I encourage people to come there and shop there and spend time and money there because they're great people. So I'm sure your shop is the same way. So we're definitely going to come and visit you and have some chats and recommend that people looking for furnishings for their home come and check it out as
Definitely.
Well.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So, Jennelle, who would you like to nominate to come on the show?
So I would definitely nominate Jolene Mackey.
Okay.
She's a local artist and just she deals a lot with I have her work in my shop actually, very surreal themes. She's got these little robots in a lot of her paintings and her stories behind that, the inspiration for that little robot are very cool and I'd like to hear more about it.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Newtown Big Dreams podcast with your host, Luke Menkes, and his authentic guests. And we love our listeners and hope you subscribe now to learn more about the amazing journeys of our incredible guests who relocated to find a new town, big dreams. And remember, make your dreams big.